You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as t-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.IsraelSportsRadio.com. All right, on the line right now to give our World Series preview, a nice little kick on the Boston side, is the author of Modern Day Maccabees, Andy Gershman. Andy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. My team is ready to win their 8th World Series.
Yes.
Feeling good about this.
There was an 86-year gap between World Series wins, 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, whatever it is. But this is, before we talk in the particulars of pitching matchups and clutch hitting, all that kind of stuff, I want to talk about the background of the series, because since 2004, these have been the two best teams, in my opinion. They have 2 World Series titles apiece. After this year, they're going to combine for 5 and 11 pennants. 4 MVPs, 3 Albert Pujols, and 1 for Dustin Pedroia. So talk a bit about that. I mean, before the 10 years before that, it was all Yankees. The last 10 years has been a mixture of the Cardinals and the Red Sox, and they're dominant. So talk a bit about that angle.
Well, I think that, like you said, these have been 2 organizations that have kind of set the bar. Obviously, the Red Sox last year lowered the bar just a bit.
Yeah.
But bounced back with a little stability in the organization by bringing Farrell in. But, it's interesting to see because, we can look at that 2004 series where they play each other, and the parts have changed so much. I think David Ortiz is the only Red Sox player left from 2004. I'm not sure on the Cardinals side, but obviously Pujols, not around.
Right.
I remember when all of that was going on, you were a big supporter of not giving him the huge contract.
That's right.
Look, it's trust in your organization. I mean, each organization has found, a lot of people have said that this Red Sox team was made up of basically a bunch of retreads. You had Napoli and Gomes and obviously Victorino, who was awful for the Phillies in the last 2 years, yet comes up huge to put them in the World Series. So, it's trusting your front office, and obviously, it was all Theo, and then Ben Cherington, who's taken over and worked under Theo, has now seemed to find the right combination and keep these 2 organizations very, relevant throughout the first 10 years of this decade.
Yeah, going back to Albert Pujols, I was very vocal of not getting that extension. Not partly – the money was part of the issue, but more the years on the contract. Albert wanted 10 years, and I said, you're going to be paying $25 million for a 40-year-old at the end of his career. You look the way things go out now, I don't know. He wasn't worth the money for the first 2 years of the deal, and I'm sure he wishes – probably in private, he probably says, I wish I would have stayed with the Cardinals and would be playing for another World Series. Matheny, great job as manager. Of course, this is the second year after Tony La Russa retired. 1 appearance in the NLCS last year, an appearance in the World Series this year. I want to talk about Bobby Valentine. I don't know if Bobby Valentine will ever get a major league job again the rest of his life, because the year before, the Red Sox just missed the postseason. The year after he leaves, they make the World Series. While he's there, it's a disaster. The Red Sox got the team. Give away Josh Beckett and other high-priced players to the Dodgers. So talk about Bobby Valentine. Why was he such a disaster with the Red Sox last year, and how come when he left, the Red Sox did so well?
Well, and going back to your point of how awful it was last year and how the Red Sox are now in the World Series, think about it. The West Coast Red Sox, which is what the
Dodgers
are, between, you had Beckett, you had Gonzalez, all these guys. And, if you want to throw it in, this isn't Bobby Valentine's fault, but Hanley Ramirez was a Red Sox minor leaguer before he was traded. He was traded for Beckett. But and look how far they went. They go to the NLCS. So, he had the players, he had the pieces, but for whatever reason, he just completely lost control. And it wasn't like Francona, who then takes the Indians into the playoffs this year. It was they had said all these things about Francona and the fried chicken, and there was all these things that Francona had lost control, and Valentine. But last year was just a joke. I mean, it was just an absolute joke, and his shtick in New York. I mean, I think everyone has that image of
the
him
mustache
coming back dressed up as a clown or whatever,
right?
With the glasses and after he'd been thrown out, and I don't know. It's just one. You don't want to say that New York's not a serious sports town, but there's a higher level between the Mets and
the Yankees
and the Red Sox
and
and
the Mets
Yankees.
Right.
There's a completely different game, and I think that you have to applaud the front office for being willing to say, you know what, one and done. And John Farrell obviously brings that stability value, especially to some of the veterans, that he knew, like Lester and Buchholz and Poppy, to be able to kind of gain the quick respect of the clubhouse. Locally here in Washington, and they've got the same dilemma, what they're going to do. And I have a feeling they're going to put a bench coach in place to manage the Nationals because of that very reason, to keep the cohesiveness, not throw it completely off, and see where you go.
You take a look at Bobby Valentine, you start to figure out maybe there was a reason why from 2002 to 2012 he didn't manage in the majors. He had a 6-year stint with in Asia, coaching the Chiba Lotte Mariners. I apologize if I pronounced that name wrong, which I probably did. So you start to figure out maybe there was some reason to that idea among the teams that got spread that this is a guy that's a little weird, or this is a guy that can't control his players, or the players don't like it, whatever it is. And again, Bobby Valentine probably done in the majors for the rest of his life. Let's talk about, this is a different angle that is discussed from time to time, but let's talk about it because it's more interesting this year. The All-Star Game, determining home field advantage, the AL wins. Red Sox get the home field advantage. The AL won partly because of a Yankee, Mariano Rivera. He pitched the scoreless eighth. He won the MVP. It was his last All-Star game. How weird is that a Yankee could help the Red Sox win the World Series this year?
Yeah, I mean, and hey, Mariano, he helped the Red Sox win the World Series in 2004.
Ouch. Ouch. Very nice. Well said.
So I don't, look, I'm not a big fan of home field determined by the outcome of the All-Star game. I think it is a complete nonsense. Basically, for the reason you said, you have some guy playing for, I don't know, because every team has to have a representative. Let's just say the Houston Astros, who, comes up with one big hit and puts the now American League, last year it would have been the National League, now it's the American League, in the World Series. It's just nonsense. I still think with this expanded interleague play, it should be determined by which league comes out with the best record overall in interleague play. I think that would be the most telling stat as to who dominates as a league. That would be my formula for it. You have a very interesting situation this year in that both teams, the Red Sox and Cardinals, ended up with the exact same record,
right,
both being the best records in baseball. So, that creates a whole other dynamic with these two that normally does not happen. But, the fact that they have the exact same record.
All right, I want to talk about Mike Napoli. When Napoli left the Rangers for the Red Sox, I thought, okay, he just did that for the money. The Red Sox aren't going anywhere. And it looks like he looks like a genius now because as the team is going to the World Series, of course. Napoli, in my opinion, in 2011, had the Rangers won the World Series against the Cardinals, would have been the MVP of that series. I thought he was great, both sides of the field. Talk about him this year. His average is not great, 259. but almost 100 RBI, 92 out of the first place position, 23 home runs. So the Red Sox, that was a pretty good pickup overall, in my opinion, at first base. What were your thoughts about Mike Napoli this year?
Well, generally, Napoli was a dominant force for the Rangers in Fenway Park. So that was one of the keys to picking up Napoli. The irony, of course, is that he hits the home run in Comerica the other night, which, like you said, his average has been horrible. I mean, they've got some guys that are just not hitting in that lineup. But, like you said, when he hits, it's turned out well. I think the signing was really driven on his success at Fenway Park, and whatever they got out of him after that was just a bonus. I think that he, it's one of those guys again that people weren't so sure of, and like you said, I mean, especially these guys that signed coming off a horrible last place finish. So who knows what they were looking for, if it was just the money or not, but it seems that these little moves and pickups have certainly proven to be the right ones.
Napoli's situation is funny, is that he's played first base this year, but most of his career was a catcher, obviously, and most of his career has been with the Los Angeles Angels, coached by Mike Scioscia, who was a catcher. And apparently my understanding was him and Napoli didn't really get along, and that's part of the reason Napoli left. And with the Rangers, 2011 that was his best season so far. As I mentioned, would have won the MVP of the World Series, but in the regular season, batted .320, 30 home runs. That's the most in his career. So he really seemed to somewhat take off after he left the Angels, and now he is with the Red Sox at first base. And that you figure the wear and tear would have helped his average a bit. It apparently did not, but they're going to obviously have to count on him and the hot quarter for the Red Sox to win the World Series. We're on the line right now with Andy Gershman, author of Modern Day Maccabees. Let's talk. I want to talk about David Ortiz, because 38 years old. People thought he was done, I assume. He leads the team in batting average, home runs, and RBI. 103 RBI, 30 home runs, 309 average. So you're probably thinking if Poppy's juicing, who cares at this point, right?
Would I say something like that?
No, never.
Damage the integrity of baseball?
Yeah.
Look, whether he is or isn't, I mean, wasn't he on the Mitchell report or something at some point?
Yeah.
He never served a suspension or anything, I
Right.
don't believe. I don't think, as we've discussed off air, I don't think that Major League Baseball cares. So I'm not sure why I should care at this point. The fact that our good friend Johnny Peralta was managed to be a hero in Detroit after serving 50 games, it kind of left a really bad taste in my mouth. So I'm going to go with, I don't think he is juicing, but if he is, he's my player juicing. Isn't
Right.
that the way it goes?
Yeah, pretty much. When your guy cheats, you look the other way. The other guy cheats, then you complain.
Right. I mean, if it was a Yankee, I'd have a whole different opinion.
Right. To look at his home run numbers, people listening to the program, they go to baseballreference.com while they're listening to this. And his home run numbers, that's usually the indicator if there's steroids going on or not. Baseball prime tends to be 32. He only had 23 home runs then, but 2 years earlier he had 54. Now, he was injured a bit. That was 2008, only 109 games. So the home runs fluctuate a little bit. I don't know. Look, we were talking about Rafael Palmeiro off the air, if he took steroids or not. And from age 30 to 38, he had 37 home runs or higher. So the 30 home runs at 37, 38, a little suspicious. But like you said, no one seems to care. And as I've said, the average fan wants to drink a beer, eat a hot dog, and watch a home run. They don't really care the integrity of the game. So as it is, Ortiz leads the Red Sox in the offensive categories. I want to go now to the Cardinals and talk about Molina, because 2 years ago when the Cardinals won the World Series, obviously David Freese was a hero, and Chris Carpenter had 2 wins, and Lance Berkman had some clutch hits. But I really thought the MVP of that series was Molina, because defensively he kept the Rangers in check. The Rangers only had 1 stolen base in 7 games. They were top 5 in stolen bases. So I thought he was the real reason the Cardinals won. Now, the Red Sox don't steal bases the way the Rangers did 2 years ago. But talk about Molina's impact. Molina this is probably his best season of his career. He leads the Cardinals' batting average with a .319 average out of the catcher position. So that's a huge plus. So talk about Yadier Molina playing for the Cardinals.
Well, actually, I mean, I have to take exception because the Red Sox actually do steal bases. I mean, maybe not like Texas, but they do go. They're a pretty fast team.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, there was talk that that in Detroit, trying to think what game it was. I think it was Game 3. It was the first game in Detroit, I believe. It might have been Game 4. There was a lot of talk. I was listening to the radio broadcast about how on 2 consecutive hits, Ellsbury had a double on one hit and a single on the other. He slipped going around first base both times. And they were talking how there was a lot of rumblings that the grounds crew for Detroit was instructed to make first base area very wet because they wanted to slow down the Red Sox.
Wow.
Because they were a much faster team than Detroit. And between Ellsbury and Victorino, and then they have a couple of kids coming off the bench that can run, Bogart and one other whose name completely escapes me right now, who's basically put in just to steal bases. And so they were talking about how they were so much faster than Detroit that they. And it's funny is that they were talking about it so matter-of-factly, and one of the guys, he was like, I've heard of this before. And the funny thing is, I mean, I feel like I've watched and listened to a lot of baseball. I've never heard that before in my life. But
the grounds crew thing?
Yeah. Apparently it's fairly commonplace. But, the Red Sox, they bunt guys over. They do play a little more small ball than you would think for a team that hits as many home runs as they do and who can play wall ball at Fenway. So I think Molina's going to be a huge part. I think the Molina family is sort of like the Grammaticas, I think, in field goal kicking.
Right.
They as a group, they are very good. And I think obviously Yadier's the best of them. And I think not only does it show, it'll show with base running, it shows with those young pitchers that he can, it's like kind of like the old Red Sox having Veritek on the field. It's a manager on the field. And so I think it's going to be, it'll be an interesting cat and mouse game with them. And, like I said, I mean, he's a great catcher, not to mention hitting .319. With 80 RBIs. So, it'll be interesting to see how he slows them down.
All right, yeah, you're right. I need to apologize. Jacoby Ellsbury leads the league in stolen bases with 52. So, you're right. They stole bases. I mean, I didn't think the Rangers are top 5 2 years ago in the AL. I don't think the Red Sox were that high. But, yeah, okay, they do steal bases, and Molina obviously will be a huge part of keeping them in check. He's able to do so. Let's talk about starting rotations for both ball clubs. Let's go with the Cardinals first. Wainwright, obviously the ace. He's had experience. He's won 2 World Series. He was on the 06 ball club and in 2011. You have Lynn, Miller, Kelly. These are not big names. This is the starting rotation that they're going with because they have to.
Well, yeah. Well, in Game 2 you have Waka, I believe, right?
Waka, yeah. Waka, yeah.
He's been the surprise story of the playoffs, obviously. Look, I think if there's anything the Red Sox have as an advantage of what they've just been through is they've been through some great rotations. They
Detroit, obviously.
Had, having to go with Scherzer and Verlander, David Price in Tampa. So they've been through some rotations that have certainly seemed to have overmatched. But it's a matter of bullpen, as we saw with Detroit, because Scherzer both times got pitched gems and then got beat by. Well, he didn't get beat, but the relievers got beat by grand slam home runs, in both of his starts. And it was, I think that it's really a matter of their patience. They've also shown that, in the case with Sanchez, who, with Detroit, who threw a no-hitter through 7 innings, the very next game they got to him very early. So I think they managed to adjust. This team is made up of quote-unquote professional hitters. I always like that term.
Right.
Professional baseball players.
Yeah.
But I think that they do make adjustments. So I think if they're patient and they don't, work some counts, they have some holes, though. I mean, they have some major holes. I mean, for
a World Series team, a 97-win team, to have this rotation is somewhat surprising. But 2 years ago when the Cardinals won, they had an ace in Carpenter. Outside of that, they had pitchers with losing records in the playoffs, and they figured out a way. But
right.
But
I mean, for name recognition, the Red Sox certainly have name recognition.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lester,
Lackey, Peasy, those guys all have name recognition. But you can't discredit what has gone on with St. Louis. I mean, it's unbelievable what these guys have done come playoff. It's like this magical switch that happens, without bringing too much football or anything else into it. I mean, look at what it's so similar to what happens with the Giants and
great point.
And football and the Ravens. It's like the switch goes on once the playoffs start. It was like completely turned. And I think like you said, while they had the best record in baseball, they battled all year with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. It was, that was, the Red Sox were challenged for maybe 2 to 3 weeks out of the season, in the regular season. But, it wasn't anything like what the Cardinals went through. And yet, here we go, playoff time. I mean, you have to, losing Pujols is one thing. But when you lost La Russa and Matheny came in, that's when you're like, really?
Right, yeah.
That's who you're going to go with?
That was a tough spot. Well, you talked about, this is the point you made earlier with Washington about trying to pick a coach that's already with the organization. You don't bring in a new guy. Matheny was with the Cardinals, played for the Cardinals.
Right.
So it worked out good. I mean, that worked out better than bringing a big guy name that was outside of the organization.
Yes. By the way, going back to the NLCS.
Yeah.
Because I didn't watch much of it because I had so many sleepless nights just staying up, here all night watching
Red Sox.
So I figured the NLCS was like a day off or a night off, being that my Braves were eliminated early again. But what was the reaction of one Mr. Mark McGwire? I wonder how that felt emotionally.
Yeah, well, look,
being the hitting coach for the Dodgers, but knowing the Cardinals like he does,
yeah,
had to be a bit of an odd experience.
Well, of course, as you know, he regrets taking steroids. So he's an emotional roller coaster, Andy. He's a really deep guy. I mean, he regrets making about $100 million he should have never made. So he probably is filled with all types of emotions when he went back to St. Louis. He's like,
that's how it works. Okay.
He's like, oh, this is where I hit a juiced home run. This is where I hit a juiced home run. This is where I made my money. Well, I don't, McGwire, I mean, you talk about, this didn't happen, but I would have thought, what if Don Mattingly, with the Dodgers and Yankees played in the World Series, and if Don Mattingly played against the Yankees, that's where he made his name. He won an MVP, Donnie Baseball. I don't know.
Right. I know.
They have mixed emotions, but they're they tell themselves this is a business, blah blah blah. I don't know if they really mean that because they're human beings, but it was whatever. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm more torn with the McGwire thing, probably the average person, because I saw him hit his 500 and 500 first home run, respectively, and people would tell me, my friends would tell me he's cheating because they found that I forgot what it was called. They found his creatine. Yeah, they found the creatine and like, oh, he must be cheating. I said, no, it's not true. He doesn't take creatine anymore because of the kids. He found out kids were taking it. He stopped taking it. He's a good guy. He gives to charity. He's not cheating. They would have found out already. And so I feel betrayed. So he can stay in the Dodgers as long as he wants. Just stay away from us.
The creatine thing was so amazing because it was sold at GNC. It was completely legal. And so everyone figured he knew that. So he was willing to, put it on the shelf there for everyone to say. So if anyone questioned, he could say, "What? It's creatine."
Right.
What are you talking about?
He did that on purpose. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, creatine at the time, probably now still as well, was banned in the NFL. And that's why they made a big deal out of it, that it's legal in baseball, illegal in the NFL. So that is how he's doing this. And then he said he stopped taking creatine and whatever. Doesn't he, as we like to say with McGuire, he's not there to talk about the past. He's there to talk about the future. So that's cool.
Right.
I could steal like $1,000 from someone, and then if they get upset, just say I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to talk about the future. The future with your $1,000 I stole. That game in '99 that I saw, just a quick tangent off, that I saw him hit his 500 home run. Gwynn had his 2,999th hit, almost 3,000. He got it in Montreal, where someone else in Montreal, I think, watched Gwynn get that hit. But in any case, I could have sold that ticket, I believe, for $300. That was the market on the scalpers market. And it wasn't a great seat, but I really wanted to see him do that. So as you learn, it is a business all the way around, so I should have taken advantage of that. But that's not what happened, and so there you go. So let's talk about – we're talking about the starting rotations. I mean, there's no question the Red Sox have the advantage here. Or you say there's an argument for it.
You would think that, but, I think it all goes to in these series, I think games 1 and 2 are the two most important games. And looking at Wainwright and Walker, I mean, versus Lester and Buchholz, it's going to be an interesting go. And I become a strong believer. I always was a big believer in home field advantage, but I'm not such a believer anymore. So I think that these two games are going to be huge. And, you put 1 and 2, and then momentum builds. So I don't know that it's such a huge advantage, but, should be interesting.
Partly also with the first two games is that the pitcher rotation, it's not usually you're going to see one guy twice. If you beat up on a guy game 1, his confidence is a little shattered going to game 5 because he saw the team already, saw them hit off him. That's why the first two games are critical in establishing the pattern. And obviously, as far as the bullpen, if Adam Wainwright pitches a complete game in game 1, the bullpen is rested for games 2, 3, and 4. If he gets in trouble and they have to use Axford and Rosenthal and so on, then it's more of a problem for game 2, game 3, and so on. I want to talk about the bullpen because the Cardinals go the save guy, if you will, Mojica, if I have that name pronounced right. This is not Mariano Rivera, but 37 saves and in the regular season, and ERA of under 3. So do you see him? I mean, doesn't have a lot of postseason experience because he was with Cleveland, beginning his career in San Diego, was with the Cardinals last year via Miami Marlins. So what are your thoughts about giving him the ball in the ninth, with a 1-run lead in Fenway Park?
Look, I think you got to stick with what got you there.
That's right.
I still would say that advantage certainly goes to the Red Sox and Uriara, who has pitched an unbelievable had an unbelievable year for a guy who wasn't supposed to be even the closer. I think I heard a stat that he's allowed fewer men on base in something in the history of baseball right now than
based on his innings pitched. You're saying?
Yeah, based on innings pitched. It's unbelievable. Like, and he's just. Other than that one hiccup he had against Tampa when he threw that home run ball, it's been unbelievable. To watch him come in, and it's pretty much, he's just the movement on the ball, and he's just been lights out. So I think I would still give the advantage to Koji there, but I think what ends up happening so often is middle relief, is where you really have to see who has the advantage, The Red Sox with, Breslow has been pretty good. Workman's been okay. Morales had a terrible game the other night. But, it's, getting to the closer seems to be the key.
Oh, yeah.
And the Red Sox do not typically, you mentioned Wainwright, going the distance. The Red Sox don't do that. I mean, they, 6-7 innings and switching up. Now, what'll be very interesting, and what is always, to me, one of the bigger issues I have in the World Series is how I think typically, although it hasn't played out that way, I think typically you would think the National League would have an advantage because of the DH and everything and the changing in rules. Because you get an extra bat in your lineup.
And you have a guy in the American League that now has to hit that doesn't hit throughout the entire year. So it's supposed to be an advantage for the National League, but in the last 15 years since the wild card began, the American League has dominated the World Series. Obviously, 5 of those titles for the Yankees, but even besides that, 2 for the Red Sox, and you have 1 for the Angels in 2002. I mean, overall, the American League is dominated. Actually, outside you have the Cardinals and the Marlins winning 2 apiece, and let's say it's pretty. I don't think a National League team has won 2 outside of them. So the American League is dominated but the American League is the better league. They have better offensive players, and that disadvantage doesn't seem to hurt them too much in the World Series.
It doesn't even hurt. I mean, but it certainly changed. I mean, Ortiz is not a very good first baseman.
Yeah.
And so, when you go to St. Louis, that takes Napoli out of the lineup, puts Ortiz in. So, and I think you tend to manage a little bit differently if, when your pitcher comes around and that kind of thing. So, it always makes for, a lot more thinking. But, typically the games have gone faster in National League Park. I think did I read this correctly that when there was a 1-0 game between the Cardinals and Dodgers that lasted, I think, 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours, 45 minutes. A 1-0 game between the Tigers and Red Sox went 4 hours. So, that's a huge difference in time and speed of the game.
Well, also, this was an argument made against the Colorado Rockies with Coors Field that it was a disadvantage to them because not that they played 1-0 games, the opposite. They played 15-14 games with the extra point after the touchdown, as my friend used to say. And those 4-hour games would drain the team because you're playing an hour longer than everyone else is. You're going to get tired at the end of the season. Obviously, everyone's going to suck it up because of the World Series, but that would be a disadvantage to the Red Sox that they're playing longer games throughout the year, and they could be a little more tired. Obviously, the adrenaline is going to push them through if they are fatigued a bit. The Red Sox have the advantage with the reliever. Let's talk about middle relief, as you mentioned. The Yankees, when they were really dominant with the 4 World Series titles in 5 years, a lot of that was Jeff Nelson. Jeff Nelson got the ball to Mariano Rivera, and when Jeff Nelson wasn't on the team in 2001, I actually thought that's why the Yankees lost to the Diamondbacks, because Mariano had to pitch the 8th and the 9th, and I thought that made him a bit fatigued. Mariano actually pitched a lot in that World Series. That's why I thought he gave up those hits to Luis Gonzalez and set up the 9th. So middle relief, how do you feel from the Red Sox perspective?
Well, like I said, Breslow has been on, and Workman. I guess the bigger questions are going to be have to do with Morales coming in. I don't watch, like I said, the Cardinals enough to really know their middle relief and how Mancini uses them. But, the whole lefty-righty thing just gets, so I think they overthink it, to be honest with you.
I agree, yeah.
And so,
I agree. They make too much out of it. I mean, if I'm managing the Yankees and Babe Ruth is up, I don't pinch hit him for a right-handed hitter. because I want a righty-lefty matchup. I'm like, he's Babe Ruth. So sometimes that stuff doesn't matter. You know, David Ortiz is left-handed. I want him in the bottom of the ninth. I don't care if he's facing a left-handed pitcher. That doesn't bother me. So I think managers sometimes outthink themselves with the righty-lefty matchup.
Right. I mean, I think that, you know, I don't know. I think they do it. They do it just in all different. You know, sometimes they're defensive moves or something like that. You know, I mean, the other night the Tigers took out Peralta in left field because he's not a great left fielder. Okay, so I get that, but his bat, how can you dismiss his bat? You know, and so you know. Oh wow! Did you see this breaking news? Jim Leland to resign as Tigers manager.
Wow. Well, Hall of Fame manager, won a World Series title in 1997 with the Florida Marlins. And I felt good when he won that title because he struggled with the Pirates all those years. He lost 3 years in a row in the NLCS, and he was able to get his title with the Florida Marlins. And when Leland went to the Tigers, I thought, you know, this is he just kind of last hurrah type of thing, but he had a pretty good manager career with the Tigers. 2006 went to the World Series, and this year went to the ALCS. So I'm assuming that was his last job in the majors in his lifetime, but you never know. You never know, but you would think.
You would think.
But who knows? I mean, are there other opening spots that would fit him well? I mean,
you know, sometimes scenery changes are, you know, all it takes, right?
Well, the managing carousel is probably stranger in baseball than any other sport. You have Mike Hargrove was fired the day he won American League Manager of the Year after I think it was 1997-98. I mean, you have Girardi, right, was fired the day he won. So I don't know exactly why that is. You figured you want to keep Manager of the Year, but these managers, when they bounce around, it could be for all types of reasons. You had back in the day, you had George Steinbrenner, who, of course, that's a favorite of yours, fire 5 times. Oh, God, he's slipping my name. He managed with the A's. Buddy, right? Buddy Ball it was. I'll get in a moment, but
right.
Yeah, the Magic Carousel, I don't know what will happen if you think Jim Leland has a couple more years left in him?
Yeah, someone will do it. I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, Girardi signed that long contract. I'm surprised we haven't heard anything about Socha yet. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, these guys, but they all move around. You know. And by the way, what do you think about Alan Craig is back for the World Series as well?
That's a huge deal. Alan Craig, I think, is top 3 for the Cardinals in batting average. By the way, Billy Barton is who I meant. Billy Barton was fired as Billy Ball, and he was fired 5 times and rehired by the Yankees. So just an example of managing craziness in Major League Baseball. We're on the line right now with Andy Gershman, author of Modern Day Maccabees. We talked middle relief. My opinion, the most important, I don't want to say stat variable, if you will, in the World Series is not starting pitching. I know most people think that. I say it's clutch hitting. When you look at teams that win the World Series title, you generally will see a clutch hit somewhere. 2 years ago, obviously, it was in spades with David Freese. If you look at the Yankees, they had a bunch of clutch hits from Jeter, Bertie Williams, Paul O'Neill, Scott Brocious. So usually it comes down to some clutch hitting. If you have to choose, basically, is there a better guy than David Ortiz that the Cardinals can offer up, or does your team have the best clutch hitter in this World Series?
Let me see. I think Pedroia is pretty clutch. You know, I think that's going to probably. I think it comes down to Pedroia and Ortiz as the 2 guys that I would consider clutch in this series for the Red Sox. And ironically, obviously, they bat right next to each other. So, it could come down to, though, Victorino, because if he can get on base, you can only get clutch hits if there's guys on base.
Right. That's a great point there.
So it could come down to Ellersby and Ellsbury and Victorino to see if Pedroia and Ortiz can put them in.
So
the Cardinals.
Did you think Shane Victorino's biggest home run was when in a Phillies uniform, as Ari Bluestein said?
Well, as I told him.
On Facebook, yeah, the wall, yeah.
4 runs is 4 runs. I don't know how you determine which is bigger. This one put them into the World Series.
Not bad.
Not a bad run.
All right.
I think this one probably was bigger for Victorino just because people thought he was dead and gone as a player.
By the way, Alan Craig, top 3 in batting average I mentioned, he led the Cardinals this season in RBI 97. So that's a huge pickup the Cardinals get back. I want to talk about Carlos Beltran. Beltran statistically is actually the greatest postseason hitter of all time. Now, he has not won a World Series, and a lot of people remember him for the 2006 strikeout against the Cardinals, against now his teammate Wainwright when he was on the Mets. He looked at that strike. Obviously the World Series is big for everyone, but this really, Beltran is I don't know. I don't know if I want to say borderline Hall of Famer. I have to really look at all his numbers, but a really solid career, no World Series title. This, he gets a couple big home runs. Cardinals win it. People will forget about that strikeout. So talk a bit about Beltran and the pressure he has going into this World Series.
Beltran is one of those strange players that people love to hate. Well, I can't even figure out why, but he's one of those players that people really have strong emotion towards. He's been, I think he set the record this year. He passed Babe Ruth, for most home runs in the postseason. Is that right?
Yeah, he has the record. So, again, as I said,
obviously Babe Ruth wasn't afforded,
3 rounds.
Playoffs.
Right.
That the numbers are a little misleading there. You have, usually when you look at those statistics, you have those 90s Yankees are all over the place, between Bernie Williams and Jeter and,
Andy Pettit.
Andy Pettit, Mariano, all those guys. And then you have, on the other side, the worst of the records usually come from my beloved Braves because they've all been there so many times and didn't win.
Right.
So, it's one of those things. Look, he's been fairly consistent, and I agree with you that if he has a couple of big games and he's the MVP of the series, which he easily could be, then I think that all is forgiven, and they could, push him into that Hall of Fame category. It's funny, you look at his career, and then you look at somebody like Torrey Hunter, who's never been to the World Series, but yet Torrey Hunter is loved, as one of the good guys in baseball.
Beltran, here are his numbers for the regular season in his career. He has 358 home runs. Now, he's 36 years old, so he very well could get to 400 home runs. He has just over 1,300 RBI, so he very well could, by the time he retires, will probably be at 1,700, so around there. He has almost 1,000 walks, so that's pretty good. That's good for anyone. It's pretty good for a power hitter. Does have a lot of strikeouts, over 1,400 strikeouts. His average, 283, also good for a power hitter. So a good, strong performance in the World Series and a few more solid seasons could push him in the Hall of Fame. A few minutes we have left with you. Let's talk.
He's certainly got better numbers than, a Jorge Posada.
Yeah. Posada's not a Hall of Famer, of course. But also with Beltran is a very strong defensive player as well. And plus, whatever it's worth to the writers, he played a good portion of his career in Kansas City, where he didn't have, obviously, a lot of protection in the batting lineup. That might influence the writers one way or the other. Who knows about that? Of course, it's our favorite variable in any championship situation, the X Factor. So, Andy, give us your X Factor for both the Boston Red Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals.
All right. My X Factor is David Ortiz. I'm just kidding.
Who would pick a star as an X Factor?
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, yes.
Oh, I seem to have lost you a little bit of your volume. I'm going to go with my good friend Xander Bogaerts as the X factor for the Red Sox.
All right.
I think he's the youngest player in Major League Baseball right now. And I think that he is one of those guys. They put him in third to replace Middlebrook. I think the other night. I think that his speed. I think he changes. He was their minor league player of the year this year. He was a late call up, and I'm going to go with him for my X factor.
All right. For the Red Sox, I'm going to go with Jacoby Ellsbury. I know he's a bit of a star, but I say the X factor because, as I mentioned, he led the American League in stolen bases, 52, but he will have to run against Molina, and that's a huge deal because if he can steal bases, he'll be in score position for guys like Dave Ortiz and Pedroia. If he can't steal bases, that will really hamper the Boston Red Sox. So I like that situation as the X factor really determined either way for the Red Sox. Let's talk about the St. Louis Cardinals X factor. Who do you have for St. Louis?
This is a little more difficult.
It is.
For me.
It really is because there's
not intimately, and I consider some of their players stars. That
right.
To call them X factors is a little difficult. So I'm going to go with the Game 2 starter, Mr. Walker. And while he's pitched great in the NLCS and throughout the playoffs, and so it wouldn't be such a shock, I think that if he, especially if Wainwright wins, if he can and shut him down and go up 2-0 heading back to St. Louis, that would be quite the feat. And look, he's pitched lights out. I think that when Red Sox batters against a pitcher they haven't seen much has never tended to work out well for them. But I think that, I think that's who I'm going to go with, Mr. Walker.
All right, now this might surprise you because he is famous, but if you look at his numbers, he's not truly a star, and that's David Freese. David Freese this season, .262 average, only 9 home runs, 60 RBI, but he was the MVP of the World Series 2 years ago and the MVP of the NLCS in 2011. So he's got the postseason magic, and that's why he's the X factor. We talk about clutch hitting and how that's key for any team that wants to win the World Series, and he's got that in spades. So, in my opinion, that is the X factor. Before we make our predictions, I want to talk about ballparks for both ball clubs and how that's who has more of a home field advantage. My opinion, of course, obviously I'm biased, but St. Louis has the best fans in all Major League Baseball. The Red Sox, the way the park is made, Fenway Park, is an advantage towards the right-handed hitter because of the short porch. Even though it's a Green Monster, it's 30 feet tall, but it's a short distance. It's 310 on the line. So talk about the ballparks and the fans for both the Cardinals and the Boston Red Sox.
Well, I think that the Cardinals probably have the best fans in the National League.
There you go.
And I think the Red Sox have the best fans in the American League. So I think both crowds are going to be very loud. The best thing I always like to say about Fenway Park, and I've never been to Old Busch, New Busch, or Future Busch, is that I don't know this for a fact, but I'd imagine. You don't have to put up a little sign that says "make noise" now. You don't have to put up the noisometer. Doing Comerica, they were doing Hava Nagila in between every pitch. It felt like, I think both sets of fans are very intelligent baseball fans, and they know when to clap and they know when to shut up, and so I think in that regard, taking fans out of games could be very important for both teams. With that said, I think that while the Monster is certainly it's a short porch in right field, the Monster is kind of an interesting dynamic. It's more about what happens when it hits off the wall,
right, and
how it's played, and also the right field corner at Fenway is a disaster waiting to happen. So both ways. I mean, you see crazy things happen off that wall and left off the Monster. I mean, from when it comes down and happens to catch the corner of the scoreboard there, and just shoots off into some weird direction because of that, something crazy like that. Then you've got that, pesky pole, which is, you and I might have a shot at taking that, a home run there.
Right.
But, it really hasn't come into play much. So I think that both, and so from that regard, I think defensively, I think it's going to be interesting. Fenway Park, I think, certainly creates challenges in that regard. I did think also, I don't know if you noticed this, but Saturday night, because it was probably the middle of the night for you, but they did actually review a home run at Fenway, Pedroia foul ball, which, the Red Sox contested that it was a home run, which it wasn't even close. I'm not sure why, other than they felt like they could.
Right.
So it was interesting to see them go into replay on that, but but I think the dynamics of the crowds are going to be very similar. Obviously, at Fenway being that old stadium, you kind of feel like people are sitting on top of you a little bit more. But it's like we started with, it's two storied franchises with a lot of history and not a lot of, it's funny, it's not a lot of animosity between the organization. You don't have that big, you don't feel that way. It's very similar to, you didn't feel that way against the Tigers either, as far as the Red Sox go. So, it's going to be one of those very civilized
right.
World Series, if you say, but going back to your pick for your
X Factor.
X Factor pick, it's funny because that's who I was going to go with originally in my mind, but I wasn't sure if he would qualify just because he was the MVP. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see guys, and X Factors are usually the key to a World Series. These guys that come out of nowhere that, for whatever reason, on the biggest stage, can put ice in their veins and just come through. And so you look for those type of guys, and these guys, you forget that they're grown men playing a kid's game, and when you see them jumping around on each other, you're like, I mean, how can you get that excited? You're making $15, $20 million,
right.
But yet in the end, it's a baseball game, and so there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. So it'll be fun to watch. And
yes.
I'd like to thank publicly Bug Selig for managing not to have a game on Friday night.
Oh, that's right, because the World Series will be Wednesday night, Thursday, then off Friday night. So there you go. Butzig has the Jewish in him after all. He's a Jew, so glad you figured that out. Just the used car salesman thing, that part I wish we didn't have to know about. Now, just real quick before we make the predictions about the ballpark, I want to get my 2 cents on it. It used to be back in the day before free agency that the team would construct its team based around its ballpark. You look at the Cardinals, Old Busch Stadium, big ballpark, and they would go for pitching and running more than a power hitter because they knew the power hitters would have a harder time hitting a home run. And it used to be that way. They used to build their team based on, they talked about the short porch on right field, so they try to, in Yankee Stadium, so they try to get left-handed hitters. Obviously, with free agents, you have a player jump from team to team, and I don't know if it matters as much anymore. But these are two historic franchises. You have the Cardinals with 11 World Series titles, 19 pennants. The Red Sox have 7 World Series titles and approximately, I want to say 11 pennants. So
I think it's 13.
13. Okay, so 13 pennants. And as I mentioned, the last 10 years, these have clearly been the two best teams. So me and Andy have dissected this World Series from the home field advantage and the parks, the X factor, starting pitching, relief pitching, the middle relief pitching, the hitting, careers. You talk about legacies, with Beltran, David Ortiz, if he can get his 3rd World Series title, obviously that puts up at a whole other level as well. Now it's prediction time, and we'll let Andy go first. So who do you have, and in how many games?
Well, I'm a little worried because I picked the Dodgers and Tigers to be in the World Series.
Well, okay.
So, obviously...
Wait, hold on. Did you make that pick before the season started or before the championship series?
I think before the playoffs started.
Okay.
Before the I knew the playoff field, I picked the Dodgers and Tigers. But you know what? I'm going to go straight homer here. I'm going to say Red Sox in 6.
All right, Red Sox in 6. Okay, now what's interesting, the 2 World Series the Red Sox won in the last 10 years or so, they won it on the away field. They won it in Colorado and St. Louis, respectively. I'd always wondered, had they won the 04 series at Fenway, what that would have been like. I think
Oh my God,
the park would have exploded. So it was, and that was thanks to the All-Star game, because the American League won the All-Star game that year, obviously, and home field advantage was with them, and that's why games 1 and 2 were in Fenway. So that was really disappointing, but that's obviously not what happened. Maybe security-wise, it would have been better that way, so that's what happened. So it would be interesting if the Red Sox win in Fenway Park. Now, when it comes to making a prediction, these teams are both very well even with the same amount of wins, 97, the 2 best teams in the major leagues. As you mentioned, the Red Sox had an easier time. No one really was within them. Cardinals, on the other hand, had to deal with the Reds and the Pirates. So that's something to think about when it comes to playing clutch, if you will, that the Cardinals have played more games that count. I'm a big believer, and history and background of this, road team in the series usually doesn't win Game 7 on the road. It has happened, but usually in the championship series, if you're the road team, you've got to close the deal in 6, and that's why I'll take the Cardinals in 6. Game 7s usually happen once every 5 years, so I don't think the series will go 7 on that front, even though both teams are very well evenly matched. I think the Cardinals have a little bit more experience. I think Beltran's going to be huge. I like Beltran actually to win the MVP of the series, and I'll take the Cardinals in 6. And before we let you go, if you think the Red Sox will win in 6, who do you think will win the MVP for Boston?
The MVP will be one Mr. Dustin Pedroia.
All right, so there you go. As you mentioned, he is a clutch hitter. He's got to be clutch for the Red Sox to win. So,
what college did he go to?
Arizona State. And he went to Arizona State at the exact same time I did, but we never bumped each other for some reason. He was probably in the cooler parties or whatever. I went to I went to a couple of A pie parties, but that was about it. So I don't know if he ever showed up there or not. But we never met. And Pedroia, who knows what? How would you were going to know that he had a American League MVP and a guy that would be so pivotal to the Red Sox? At that point was at Arizona State. But Arizona State does have a great baseball program. Barry Bonds went there. Whatever it's worth. Right. So they put out some couple good players. Andy's got Red Sox at 6. I have Cardinals in 6. Either way, we expect a great World Series. It won't be a sweep. I don't think any team's going to win in 5. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch. It begins tomorrow night. For you, Andy, it'll be probably 9 p.m. on the East Coast?
Wait, Wednesday night.
Excuse me, Wednesday night. Sorry, Wednesday night. Probably be 9 p.m. or so. 8 p.m.?
8 o'clock, yeah.
All right, so it's 3 in the morning here, Israel time. But I either have to stay up or wake up early because you just can't miss the World Series, especially one with 2 classic teams. 2 teams have been around for over 100 years, literally. So it'll be fun stuff. All right, Andy, great stuff as always. Enjoy the World Series, and we will talk on Facebook pretty soon. And we'll see what happens. We both made our predictions. It's recorded, assuming the recording lasts. And we'll enjoy it. So, and let's end the show as we did many years ago. Go ahead.
That's about all I have for now. So, good night, Jerusalem.
God bless and good night.